The play on the field, the courts, and the ice is just one part of sports. Behind every game are the people hard at work so we can enjoy the action. They're the owners, administrators, agents, broadcasters, and promoters who bring the games to life. Meet them when you go behind the game with Patrick Klinger and Bill Robertson. Welcome to another edition of Behind the Game. I'm Patrick Klinger. Joining me as usual is a man who is still lobbying the Nook restaurant in St. Paul to name a hamburger after him, Bill Robertson, Commissioner of the Western Collegiate Hockey Association. Billy Rob, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Patrick, and hope you are as well. With us today is one of the classiest people you'll ever meet in the world of sports. Considered one of the best athletes to ever come out of St. Paul, Minnesota. His dossier is incredible, with standout careers at Cretin High School, the University of Minnesota, and Major League Baseball, where he is now in both the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, New York, but just announced yesterday the Collegiate Baseball Hall of Fame. Our guest, Paul Molitor. Paul, welcome to the show.
Billy Rob, it's good to be with you. Patrick, you as well. You know, I know we've been talking about doing this for a while, so I'm glad we finally got it on the docket.
Well, we're so happy to have you, and I'm going to jump right in with the first question, and we'll rotate this around, and
Sure.
We'll make it fun for the audience, and hope you enjoy it as well, Molly. Tell the audience a little bit about what you're up to these days. I know you may be keeping your hand in baseball with your son, and then enjoying other parts of life too.
Well, first of all, I know we'll have fun because you're on the call, so that eliminates any doubt about that. You know, life is good. I feel blessed. I think we've all been challenged, you know, in 2020. There's just been so many things that were kind of unforeseeable and things that we're facing. But personally, you know, I stay involved with my family as much as I can. My kids, you know, I still got a couple teenagers, and like you said, my son is playing some baseball for the Edina Baseball Association, and I've been helping out a little bit with coaching. Although coaching at that level is challenging, you know, it's different, and you're not sure how much and how far deep you want to take the instruction. But it's been a lot of fun, and other than that, I'm grateful everyone's healthy. Getting to see a lot of the Minnesota bike trails this summer, and playing a little bit of golf with nice gentlemen like you and Patrick.
Awesome.
Hey, Paul, you know, as we speak, Major League Baseball's been back playing for a couple of weeks with no fans in the stands and really some strict measures to keep the coronavirus from spreading. If you were still playing today or managing today, would you be comfortable with what Major League Baseball has done to prevent COVID-19 from spreading amongst players?
Well, I you know, try not to be too judgmental of what they've done well and what's been a little bit lacking, just because of the unpredictability and really, you know, being 5 months into it in this country, still a lack of information that we really need in terms of not only how it spread, but the antibody. We're still facing testing questions. But as far as MLB, I would be comfortable in going out there. I think it's obvious that some things are uncontrollable as far as where exposure might pop its head at different times. But I think they're doing a good job overall. You know, the restrictions that you talked about seem to be getting more and more as they learn more, which is the right thing to do. It's still an uphill challenge. You know, they're only maybe not even a quarter away through their 60-game schedule. They've had a lot of problems already. And I just hope they can avoid any major pitfalls going forward, and we can see the 60-game come to completion, and hopefully have some playoff baseball in October.
Molly, if Major League Baseball is able to finish, and I say if they're able to finish a 60-game schedule and host a World Series, do you think most fans and media sponsors will consider it legitimate as a championship instead of a full 162-game season?
It's going to count, but I would argue the legitimacy somewhat, and just the fact that you're not only dealing with a short season, the whole idea of the expanded playoffs, rosters, injuries, depletions, virus cases. There's a lot of things that are making this season very unique. You know, I was involved with some seasons that were cut short in terms of games because of work stoppages. You know, 1981, a long time ago, but we had to split the season into two halves. We crowned the world champion, but I think in years like that, and what we'll see if we do get through a postseason this year, go ahead and claim yourself the champion, but everybody's going to know that the circumstances were a little different.
You know, Molly, Major League Baseball has put a great emphasis on speeding up the game, and they put some rules in place recently to try to make that happen. Yeah. Yet last year, it was every game averaged over 3 hours. I think the average MLB game was 3 hours and 6 minutes. In this era of short attention spans, how dangerous do you think that is for the game when they're lasting as long as they do?
Well, I'll try not to get too long-winded on this one. You know, I think the other games a little bit more action-packed, play-to-play. You know, a little bit of an asterisk to the time of the game is the fact that advertising time between innings has gone up. I think back when I first started, which was a long time ago, it might have been 90 seconds between frames, and now it's, for a nationally televised game, 3 minutes. So you're talking about an escalation there. But to me, it wouldn't be so much that the games are going 3 hours or 3:05. It's that the action is not there. You know, the strikeout rates and the walk rates have jumped in the past, you know, handful of years at least, as the home runs have gone up, but balls put in play has been lessened. So I just think the fact that there's a lack of flow to the games really makes people check their watch more than you would like in them watching a baseball game.
You became a legend before analytics ever took over, Molly. Players and managers went on gut instinct and feel and hunches, so to speak. You managed when data-driven decisions were made and dictated for that matter. How different were those experiences for you as a player and then as a manager to see how that's changed so much?
Well, it has changed a lot. You know, playing days, I think we got a little bit more analytical as even something simple as video got better, that we were able to do some things that way. But as far as the number crunching, going back to the Moneyball movie, which I still think was really well done and depicted the reality of the way the game was headed, I enjoyed it in both coaching and in managing to try to absorb, you know, the direction that we were going with those type of things. I think that we went a little bit overboard right away, and I think it became very competitive as to who was going to apply it the most and who was going to benefit the most. And I think eventually we'll see the analytics remain a very important part of the game. But the people that know players and instincts and makeup, situations, how their players respond in situations, I think that's still a part of the equation. But there's no question the information we have now can be very helpful, not only in how you play the game, but how you would run the game as a manager.
Paul, traditional parts of baseball like stolen bases, like bunting, like moving the runner over, have seemed to have disappeared. Now there are defensive shifts, there are replays, and it seems like everybody is swinging for the fences.
Sure.
That's certainly not the game that you grew up playing.
No, it's changed. You know, even when I played and some of the years post-playing that I was coaching or in player development, you know, you kind of saw teams according to either their philosophies or maybe the talent or how their draft worked out, or, you know, different teams would play different styles. And you saw more than one style work. But there's no question now that if you don't have people that can hit it over the fence, you're going to get left behind. I think it's great that people have been able to, you know, analyze their swings enough to create launch angle, something that I never heard, something I'm sure never Harmon Killebrew thought about, although he must have had a good one as high as he used to hit them. But, you know, it's not as entertaining for me to sit back and wait to see who outslugs who. I still like the purity of the game. I still like the base running, you know, being a little bit creative situationally. even as I managed, I got away from some of those things, hitting and running and giving guys green lights and bunting runners over. But, you know, when you get into postseason and you're facing, you know, staff aces and some of the quality pitching, sometimes you got to figure out how to create a run rather than relying on somebody to hit the ball over the fence. So it's changed. There's no question, Patrick. Probably mostly for the better, but I still think, again, some balance would be good.
Molly, you did both of these at a high level. What was harder for you, playing the game as a Major League Baseball player or managing the game?
You know, I think they're definitely different. It's like, you know, trying to compare those two things, that they're just such different roles. You know, when you first come to the major leagues, it's definitely eye-opening as far as the level of talent, and you wonder if you belong and all those type of things. But over time, I think you learn and you start to trust. You can go out there and you can play relatively confidently. You know, managing was a whole different thing for me. I've been around the game and seen lots of games and coached lots of games. But things get going really fast when you're starting to worry about, you know, everything from starting pitching and pitch counts and how you're going to use your bullpen and players you have on the bench and when to make moves. You got all your coaches asking you questions coming from all different directions. And it's just really important for you to be able to slow down and trust your instincts. I think managing was probably a little bit more challenging because I didn't have control of the game in terms of physicality and being out there playing. And you want to make sure you put your players in a good position to be successful and trying to use your roster as maximally as you could. So I enjoyed it. I still think that managing mostly is about trying to elevate people. And when you get them to be confident and more accountable, that they're going to go out there and they're going to play better. So overall, kind of back and forth on it, but I would say managing was probably tougher overall. Long answer. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Paul, the salaries in Major League Baseball today are astronomical. Mike Trout signed a contract last year for nearly $500 million, right? Two questions. One, do you wish you were born about 30 years later? and two, as a manager, how does a player who's worth so much money, how does that affect the game? Do you have to be extra careful in how you deal with a player like that? Are you putting him out on the field even if he's slumping because the team has invested so much money in him?
Yeah. To your first question, Pat. You know, I'm really glad that I played in the era that I did. You know, I'm not even sure if my brand of baseball would play in today's game. How about that? So, you know, it is what it's supposed to be and when it's supposed to be. You know, people that played 30 years before me, they look at the compensation during my era and they were, you know, amazed at how it had grown during that chapter of the game. So that's just part of it. It's supply and demand. It's America. The revenues in baseball, I think, have topped $10 billion now. And it wasn't all that long ago when they got to $1 billion. So it's not surprising that players are getting what they get. You know, when I managed players, I was somewhat aware, maybe not specifically, of where guys were at contractually, and didn't really influence me. Obviously, you want to try to keep your healthiest and your best players, which are probably the most highly compensated players, on the field as much as possible. But I think when you start trying to protect yourself or play a little bit safe, I think that's when problems arise. So, and you ask most guys, it doesn't really matter what they make. They're going to play and give you the same effort regardless. At least you would hope so.
Molly, I'm going to take you back to your high school days at St. Paul's Cretin High School. You played 3 sports in high school, and I was able to witness watching you as a young boy play all 3 of them: soccer, basketball, and baseball. Yeah. Do you miss playing those other sports? And did you ever think about wanting to play potentially basketball or soccer or something else, maybe golf, in college besides baseball?
Yeah, well, going back a long time, those Cretin days, which I remember very, very fondly. I'm proud to have been a member of, or I am a member of the alumni from that high school. I went to school with your brother, you know that. So we had some good memories. But you know, back then I played a little football when I was young, but I had an injury and I couldn't play when I was a freshman. So someone told me I should go out and play soccer in the fall. It would get me in great shape for basketball in the winter. And I ended up playing it all 4 years. Back then, it wasn't nearly as orchestrated as it is now. Back then, if you were fast and you could kick it hard, you were going to be a good player. But I enjoyed that. Basketball, I still love that game. High school basketball was a treat. I was actually hoping to play 2 sports in college. You know, I was hoping maybe I could get a chance to play in some program, but only a couple of smaller schools offered me that opportunity, and I, you know, chose to go play baseball at the U. And, you know, I used to dabble in basketball for a while post-playing, but, you know, the knees don't cooperate the way they used to. I still like to get out and play my son one-on-one, and he shot past me in height this past summer, and I used to be able to take him, but now he's got me. So it's a little bit humbling, but I'm so grateful that I had the opportunity to play multi-sports in high school.
Well, you've got 3,000 hits, 3,000 plus hits. You've won World Series. You've won a multitude of awards and recognitions. What is the single biggest thrill that you've had in your baseball career? Yeah,
well, I'm glad you added that last part. You know, personal and professional are obviously very different. There's no question that for me, playing 21 years in the big leagues, I only stepped into the winner's circle one time, and that was in '93 with the Blue Jays. Playing for the Brewers as long as I did, Patrick, I would have loved to have seen that city get a championship, and it just didn't happen. But, you know, you make a move and you go to another team and you're able to get back to a World Series. That was the pinnacle for me. You know, you toil and you work and you dream. And it was in my 16th year that I finally got a chance to experience that. And for those who can remember, it was a very good World Series and one of the 2 World Series ever in history to end with a home run when Joe Carter beat the Phillies in 1993. But there's no question, that's my highlight.
Paul, you're one of 3 Baseball Hall of Famers, along with Dave Winfield and Jack Morris from St. Paul. Yeah. Joe Mauer may get there at some point. Is it just a coincidence that such incredible talent has come from such a small area? Or is there another reason for this? It is incredible if you think about the area where the 3 of you grew up real close to each other.
Well, being the historian that you are, I'd be curious as to what your opinion would be on that. You know, my feeling is that, you know, all these Jack and Dave are just tremendous athletes, right? Multi-sports guys as well. In fact, Dave being drafted by 3 professional sports. But I think it's probably a little bit more coincidence than anything. I will give credit to, you know, the city of St. Paul, its baseball programs, coaches. You know, we were always very prideful of being from St. Paul and playing competitively, whether it was, you know, high school, American Legion, whatever the case may be. And for us to, you know, I think Dave's, you know, 4 years older than me and Jack maybe 1 year older than me. The odds are pretty high that would happen. You know, it's not like we're coming out of LA or something. It's the northern climate. 3 guys probably within a 2-mile radius geographically, you know, all end up in Cooperstown. So I would love to add Joe to that someday, as you mentioned. We'll have to see which way that goes, and hopefully he picks up some momentum as the years go by.
Well, there are 329 who are enshrined in the Major League Baseball Hall of Fame. Of those, only 57 went in on the first ballot. Yeah. And you're one of those. It must be surreal to think sometimes, sit back and realize you're one of the greatest who's ever played the game. Yeah. And then do you connect much with your fellow Hall of Famers? I know you get out to Cooperstown every year for the induction ceremony. This year, of course, that's not happening.
Right.
But
yeah, man, you know, I don't know how many players start their adventure through the game and and think about going to the Hall of Fame. I know I sure didn't. I did think about major leagues, watching the Twins growing up. It was a dream to think about playing professional baseball, especially at the top tier. And, you just kind of keep climbing those rungs. And for me, fortunately, after the rung of Major League Baseball, I was able to reach the pinnacle and get in there to Cooperstown. A little comment, I guess, Patrick, on the first ballot thing. I guess I don't really totally understand some of the writers' perspective. I think for a long time they thought, well, this guy, he might be a Hall of Famer, but he's certainly not a first ballot Hall of Famer. So in some ways, I think people try to tier the Hall. That you got this tier, and then maybe these guys are a different tier. We all know who the greatest players of all time were. If you want to talk about the top 5 or 10, I mean, you might debate a little bit, but they're all Hall of Famers. And so I think to try to break it down and say a guy maybe should get in, but he shouldn't be a first ballot, I guess I don't understand that. Either you think the guy is or he isn't.
Molly, you were selected 3rd overall in the 1977 draft by the Milwaukee Brewers after your standout career at the University of Minnesota. First of all, I want to know what that experience was like, because I do remember that morning and my brother grabbing the St. Paul paper from my hand and saying, I want to read this story. And I played with Paul, so I get first dibs at the paper when that happened. But you were also drafted out of high school, 28th round by the St. Louis Cardinals. And I don't know if I've ever asked you this or anybody has. Did you ever think about signing professionally out of high school in 1974 from Cretin? You had a great career. You're an All-American high school baseball player. Did you think about that before you went on to the U of M and then you were drafted 3rd overall? It worked out well.
That article was probably right next to Don Riley. I don't know. Back in the press. I knew headed into the draft, at least a couple weeks prior, that, I talked to a lot of teams. But the surprise was that, a couple teams told me that they were thinking about me in the 2nd round. And it wasn't until really the day before that I got a call that said, the Brewers told me, well, if Harold Baines goes here and Terry Kennedy and Bill Gullickson, all of a sudden they were talking about maybe picking me 3rd. And, I wasn't really expecting that all the way up until the day before the draft. And then sure enough, things fell into place and I went 3rd, which was fantastic. The Gophers, we were on our way to the College World Series. So I felt a little bit of pressure going out there, knowing that I'd been the 3rd pick and trying to perform maybe more than I should. I didn't play particularly well. But obviously, to go that high in the draft was really special. The high school thing, I was interested in signing. I really didn't have a lot of college opportunities. To tell you how the game's changed a little bit, I think I was offered $4,000 by the Cardinals as a 28th round pick or whatever it was. And I very greedily asked for 10. And they said, no, we can't do that. And so I became a Gopher. So that's kind of how that worked out.
Okay.
Paul, you finished your career with the Twins, hometown team. Was it more difficult playing here at home as opposed to playing in Milwaukee and Toronto?
Excuse me, I think thankfully that at the latter stages of my career, I think I was 39 when I came here, I didn't feel a ton of pressure. I was very excited about putting the Twins uniform on. I had some great conversations with Tom Kelly over the winter about potentially coming here, and I always admired him and was really looking forward to playing for him. Kirby Puckett, when you play different guys around the league, you imagine what they would be like as teammates. And I used to think of guys like Kirby and, Don Mattingly. I mean, there's just certain guys man, it'd be great to play on those teams. So I was so excited about that. And, unfortunately, that was the spring where, Kirby got the glaucoma. And other than a month of spring training together, we didn't get a chance to do it. But I didn't feel a lot of pressure. I still thought we were going to have a good team. Our pitching came up a little bit short. I think at the time we set an all-time record for runs scored by the Twins, which begs the question, how many more would we have scored if Kirby was in the lineup? So but it was great. I feel very fortunate to kind of have come full circle, playing on the playgrounds in St. Paul and wearing my last, wearing the Twins uniform for my last 3 big league seasons. That meant a lot to me to be able to play for that organization.
Paul, in 1987, you had a 39-game hitting streak that captured the nation and baseball's attention. How much pressure did you feel to continue that streak? And when you think about Joe DiMaggio's 56-game hitting streak, which is incredible, 39 is almost unbelievable in today's game and certainly different eras. Did you feel that pressure as you kept mounting, or how did that work for you?
Turn back the clock. I never had a very long hitting streak. I think the most I had ever had before that was like 17 or something, So, I remember that as we got into the 20s, I was made aware, obviously, by the Brewers that 24 was the team record. So when I got to 25, that was kind of cool, put your name in the Brewer record book. And then I just kind of kept playing. The good thing was it was part of the season where we were kind of in contention and the games mattered. And, it was just out there trying to grind out wins. And if you kept the streak alive, that was fantastic. You feel it a little bit more the higher it gets, obviously. You're doing pre- and post-game press conferences, which players aren't accustomed to doing. That's for the managers. And then I even got to be on Ted Koppel. For those who can remember those days, on the ABC News at night, they'd put you in that little box up over his shoulder, So there was certain things about that kind of jump out at you. But, when it got down to it, the last game, ironically, we were playing Cleveland, and a young pitcher by the name of John Farrell, who's more known probably as a manager than a pitcher, he shut me down for 4 at-bats, and we actually went 0-0 into the 10th inning, and I was on deck when Rick Manning drove in the winning run at County Stadium, and the fans booed. So it was a weird inning. But, you get a chance to go in the big leagues about 6 weeks without taking an offer. That's a pretty good run.
Bet.
Hey, Paul, unfortunately, we're out of time. I mean,
it goes fast.
We could chat with you all afternoon. Not only are you one of the greatest on the field, you're one of the greatest off the field. And your friendship means a lot, and I know it does to Bill as well. I think Bill had one final question he wanted to ask you before we part ways.
We saved this for the last, Molly.
Okay,
did you ever hit a home run off the Nook? Because there's only been, I think, one person that's ever done that, the famous left field hamburger joint at Cretan High. I know you played for Bill Peterson there and played a lot of Legion games and other things, but there's only one person that's ever done that. Did you ever do that?
Before I answer, I'm going to say thank you guys for having me on. It was fun, and it went fast, and I hope our reminiscing didn't bore too many people, but it's fun to talk the game, And to be honest with you, I think I hit the Nook, but it was a foul ball. So that's not worth anything. I think doesn't part of it in fair territory and part of it's in foul territory, right?
That's correct.
It was a target for a lot of people, but I don't think I ever hit it during the game as far as fair.
All right.
There's a reason he asked that question, of course. But
what did you hit it, Billy?
I did hit it. I hit a fair ball.
You'd have to hook a 5-iron.
Yes, that's about right.
Hey, Paul, thanks again for joining us today. Really, really appreciate it. Bill, thank you. Always great to see you, my friend. See you both on the links, I hope, sometime soon. And thank you all for watching Behind the Game.
All right, take care.